Okay, great. I think that's worked. So let's begin. My first question was about the access of the access issues surrounding the planning application, and specifically kind of how LBA have got this 200-page document that is very technical and online, so not a lot of people will be able to access it or potentially understand it. And also the time limit, which I know you've already commented on. But I wonder if you could maybe speak on that.
Yeah, so my position is really clear that because of coronavirus and the lockdown and the complexity of the planning application, that there should be a 6 weeks period once lockdown is eased, once we can actually have face-to-face meetings for exhibition, public meetings, etc. So people can engage in the process. And actually, you know, they tend to do things just in Eden, but obviously the flight path issues are much more complex than that. So they should have events in places like Horsforth and the other, although it's not my constituency or in my area, you know, going north to Bradford as well. So that's sort of my view. And it is a difficult process for the public to understand. It's a difficult process, you know, for me, to be honest. It's not designed for lay people, or to be honest, politicians, even ones who've done planning. This is a sort of step beyond that. This is like a house or an office building.
Yeah, and do you have any idea, like, so who is it you've put pressure on to, or asked to kind of extend that?
The council. Yeah, so the council, yeah, the council can do that.
What kind of time period are you looking at? Because obviously it's kind of unclear as to when it might.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course it's unclear. So I've not given a date. I just said 6 weeks after the end of lockdown.
Okay, yeah. So in Horsforth, the councillors wrote to 3,000 residents to try and make their constituents aware of the Leeds Bradford Airport. Is there anything similar being done in the Hyde Park and Headingley constituency?
Just through social media and other things. Even, to be honest, me doing a mail out at the moment isn't feasible because of social distancing. So we couldn't even. They would mean one person having to do a whole mail out. So we're not. So we're just doing it through electronic means. I've got a lot of people on my email list through the constituency, and obviously my other social media channels, and we've hit it as hard as we can through that. I mean, this is a record number of comments already for a planning application in Leeds, I understand. So I think people are aware of it. It's the complexity of it, not the awareness, that I'm worried about. People know it's happening. It's about how they engage with it and are able to engage with it.
Mm-hmm. And then reading through your objection, it kind of strikes me as interesting that you refer to only kind of a few facts or figures or institutions, kind of, to quote a few, it's like Net Zero 2030, the World Health Organization, and a few others. But my understanding of like an objection is that you should kind of like be as solid as possible and be as referenced as possible. But so is the way yours written? Is that as good as it?
No. I mean, mine. We're under a lot of time pressure because obviously a huge number of different issues that are hitting us all the time because coronavirus. And you can add to your objection. So we may choose later on to add to it. That was just me putting a marker down. We didn't have 150 hours to do all the research and write a hugely comprehensive objection. I'll be honest, I'll put my hands up, we haven't had that because we've had to deal with so many other, you know, our casework load is like about 60% higher than it normally is because of coronavirus. And we're limited, obviously, so I can't have face-to-face meetings with people, can't, you know, co-write things. So it's not quite in the place I'd like it to be. But the points there are the points. I mean, this is a very difficult planning application because what we're really objecting to isn't a building. What we're objecting to is facilitation of an increase in number of flights. So the bit of the application which is the most solid bit to object to is the increase in hours, because the increase in hours obviously facilitates additional flights in those hours. But the actual building wouldn't necessarily increase the number of flights. It's the business model that underlies it, and the fact that prior to the planning application, what facilitated the planning application was the fact that the CAA gave them the ability to expand 7 million passengers a year, so expand the number of flights. And so it is this is it is difficult. This is difficult. The building is difficult. It would have been much easier if, when the expansion happened, we were in a better place around emissions, and we'd had the Heathrow judgments and all of that. Because the bit that I think we all really want to object to is the expansion in the number of flights. The building is merely a vehicle for that expansion. I don't have any actual objections to a more carbon efficient building replacing the current building. The current building is poor. What I have an objection to is 3 million additional flights, not 3 million additional passengers a year.
So I've got a question from Keith, who says, do you believe that Leeds' core strategy in its current form is fit for purpose, and will you act to push for a proper review of it urgently? Yeah. And are you willing to?
I mean, look, I went through the core strategy last time. It is a multi-year, multi-million pound process, right? Yeah. So what I wouldn't want to do is go and write a new core strategy. That also creates uncertainty around planning. So it allows developers a huge ability to come in and to develop on bits of greenfields land. That would be self-defeating. So effectively, then we're going to throw the core strategy out and have a new one come in and use net zero 2030 as a core principle in it. Once it all finished, which probably wouldn't be until like 2024, 2025, then it would be good. But in that intervening period, it would create chaos. And we're not in a position, we don't have the time for that level of chaos. And that chaos could include the terminal going through. So I think that I'm unsure. I mean, I know you had Neil Walsh and Lisa Mulheron on. It's probably more a question for Neil than for me. If you could take the current core strategy and then overlay the net zero 2030 on top of it and strengthen it, sort of just strengthen it up a bit, utilize, so the sites would remain the same, all the other things would remain the same, but it would have, you could just run a thread of net zero 2030 through it. That would be ideal, but I'll be honest, I don't know whether there's the ability, whether it would need a change in legislation nationally, whether the council have got the ability to do that. So I think that's an unanswered question.
And then, yeah, so air travel releases particle matter 2.5, which the World Health Organization has said that there's indication that inhalation of it can cause negative health effects. I found it strange that when reading through the Leeds Bradford report that it said that the effect of having more aeroplanes would basically mean that it was negligible, whereas there are other people who say that those particles can travel up to 14 miles from the airport. I mean, how do you feel about kind of that being the science that it's based on?
So, you know, I've taken a lot of evidence on this when I was a councillor, when we were developing the clean air zone, and on the environmental audit committee since I've been MP. The reality is that PM 2.5 from heavy vehicles on the ground, like buses and HGVs, is a lot worse than planes in terms of where it's come from. But it is absolutely true that in the vicinity of the airport, some of that PM 2.5, because it is heavier than air, you know, the particular matter is heavier than air, will drop to ground level and won't have dissipated. So there will be reduced air quality because of that, but it isn't so. But Headingley's air quality issues or the city centre's air quality issues are not caused by the airport. They are caused by buses and lorries and other large diesel vehicles travelling on the road and other ground effects. So so it is an issue for people who live up there, up near the airport, but it isn't. I'll be honest, trying to make an argument that the air quality in Headingley is worse because of planes is really difficult scientific thing to show. So I would not advise people to put that in their objection.
But then on that note, I guess you did comment quite a lot on the congestion and the parking related to the airport, which would increase the air pollution. I wonder if you want to talk about that.
Those objections were really more as a constituency MP, because we already have a number of streets where people utilise those streets for long-term parking. I've been fighting a battle ever since I've been an MP to get restrictions put in, and actually the airport have been at points quite helpful about that, and we haven't done it. And obviously, if there's more passengers, there's a higher likelihood of those streets being utilised for parking. So that's people being you don't want a car parked outside your house for a fortnight, basically. So that objection is really me being a good constituency MP and defending people's rights on locally. It is not primarily an environmental objection, but obviously if we have that increase in passengers, more people will drive, and there will be poorer air quality from those vehicles as well. So that's absolutely true. But I am also trying to just resolve this parking issue. So it's that was part of that why I wrote that.
And you said, that it's not exclusively an environmental issue, and that brings me on to the economic argument that they put forward, which was obviously made pre-COVID, and there's been quite a lot of updates since then. And in your objection, you did reference that slightly, and you made it seem like you thought that the aviation industry was on its way out, basically.
I'm not sure to say it was on its way out, but I think that if you look at all of the UK airports and their expansion plans, that is just nonsense. I mean, you're talking about 23 million, I think, is extra passengers at Manchester, 20 at Luton, 15 at Stansted. I think that's the sort of scale to amount. Obviously 3 at Leeds. It's fantasy. Those numbers are not going to come now, and obviously it would be disastrous if they did. What we're seeing is that I've been on with aviation experts, and their best case scenario is that passenger numbers will recover to the current levels in 2023. That's best case scenario. But the reality is that is making a big assumption that everything will return back to how it was before, like it's elastic. And the reality is, if you just look at people's way of working, what we're doing now has become common. But maybe a little bit less from Leeds and more from other airports like Manchester, but still there are a lot of people who will go and fly on the early morning flight to Dublin or to Schiphol, or they would have done to Heathrow before that got cut, and that's again a few 100,000 passengers that are going to go missing from Leeds Bradford, to go to a meeting, then come back in the late afternoon or evening back to Leeds. Now, and that's there's a load of costs for a business on that, over and above the cost of the flight. So are those businesses going to go back to doing that, or are they going to use Zoom or some other video conferencing methodology? No, they're going to use what we've got now. And actually, you can see through screen share and webinar and all the rest of it, there's absolutely no need for people to go and do face-to-face meetings. So I think that the business travel is going to take a big hit. People are still going to go on holiday, but we don't know what's going to happen with this pandemic, with other airborne viruses. If this is the new normal, then people aren't going to want to fly, because one, there's the whole thing that states aren't going to want a large movements population because of the spread, and also people are going to be nervous about catching it on planes. They're going to be in an enclosed place for between 2 and how many other hours they're going to be in a plane going on holiday, and they're going to be worried about it. And the airlines are trying to reassure people through saying we've got filters and all the rest of it, but it's, if somebody sneezes on you in a plane, it doesn't matter what sort of filter you've got. So I think that the aviation industry, who are saying it's just going to be elastic and bounce back by 2023, are being naive. And actually, what we should be doing now, this is a wider point really, is particularly in the summer, as our summer weather is getting better, which is unfortunate in a way, unfortunate another way, encouraging more domestic tourism. So people, go on holiday here, so they won't need to use an airport. And so the summer season will inevitably change, and that will mean less flights. So my very strong view is that the airport needs to relook at its whole business model, really should be pausing now on this, relooking at its business model, waiting for the end of COVID, waiting to see what happens naturally, and then thinking in the future about what they can do. What I would like to see is that we utilise the site. So there's a lot of space, a lot of brownfield site in and around the airport to create jobs for people, but not to try and force something through when the culture of the country and of Europe or of the Northern Hemisphere or whatever is going in a different direction. And what I'd worry about is that there's huge misjudgment, not just at Leeds Bradford Airport, but other airports, and the airports will end up without a viable and sustainable plan, closing, losing lots of jobs, and of not having thought about what the cultural change is. And I think doing what they're doing at this time is, is probably not the most prudent thing they could be doing. And obviously us putting pressure on them through the process is obviously, from an environmental point of view, really important, but also in terms of people's jobs is something that people seeing as negative, that we're attacking people's jobs. We don't care about their jobs. Actually, I care about their jobs more than anything. I want those people to be in work, who work at the airport, and all the other people in the local communities who are reliant on that site for employment. But we need to think differently about what that employment will be.
Sorry, just
Did you miss a bit then?
Just the very last bit.
Just that I basically want people who are relying on the site for employment to carry on being employed, but we need to rethink what that employment will be. Yeah,
and I guess with the longevity of the aviation industry being under question, those jobs are then under question.
Absolutely. I mean, they are now. The airport is in beginning to be in talks with the unions about jobs. British Airways are cutting 12,000 jobs. Virgin are cutting 3,000 jobs. This is, it's happening.
And what are the kind of prospects in terms of greener jobs for basically kind of investing in that?
Exactly. I mean, it's a brownfield site. If we're going to see a rise in domestic tourism, why can't we utilise that brownfield site? Am I coming through? You've frozen at my end. Not sure if it's my end or Caleb's end, so I'm going to wait and see if he comes back on, and see if I might just check if I'm still. Oh, here he is. He's coming back. Hi, is that your end?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So I'll just talk again about the jobs and the site. So we've got a big brownfield site in Yeadon. And if we're gonna be doing things differently, things going forward, we need to rethink how we can utilise that site and the space. And there is a lot of industrial space. There always was a plan to utilise that space for logistics and other things related to air freight. But we can think about that space differently now and how to protect jobs and retrain people. So just something I've been dealing with this week, this is just an example, is if we're going to get a growth in domestic tourism, one of the things that we'll probably get a growth in is static caravan sites, because we need to have domestic holiday options for people at all levels of affordability, and static caravans are at the sort of cheaper end. So they are mainly built in the UK. So in Yorkshire, in East Yorkshire, that's the biggest site. So why couldn't we build them also in West Yorkshire? And that site is a good site to do something like that. And the skills are, there already are skills in and around West Yorkshire to do that. And any sort of, light manufacturing could be done from that site, and we could rethink how the area, operates and what its specialisms are, and then we can provide the skills through Leeds City College or the University Technical College, UTC, to provide skills as well. And I think that that's something the council should be thinking about now, is working with the airport and looking at utilisation site differently. You know, we're not here to attack the airport or its workers, or you know, undermine it anyway. We're here to try and provide a low carbon economy and to provide jobs. That's really, you know, the task here. That transition ensures a transition, but that transition is just transition for workers as well as for the environment.
So a question from Lizzie, who says, other than registering your objection and publicising it, how do you plan, or how can you ensure that the expansion proposal doesn't get approved?
Well, I don't have any formal powers, Lizzie. That all rests with the council. You know, I am, in some ways, you know, I'm like, you know, citizen number one. So I have exactly the same abilities and sort of agency as you. I'm just like the number one citizen because I carry the views of the constituents, my constituents, with me. So, you know, so I'm just like at the front of the queue. So I'll, you know, if, obviously not at the moment, but if there are protests and actions, if there is you know, if the application goes through and there's an appeal, I'll lead, you know, I'll work and lead and campaign on the appeal and to raise money and all the rest of it. If the council doesn't undertake the appeal, which I'm not sure, they're not, obviously we're not at that stage yet. So so those sort of things that I'll do, but I can't go to Parliament and pass a law. You know, I can't get a law passed that will stop this planning application going through. And at this stage, the Secretary of State has no role in it. So obviously, if it gets to the stage where that also could happen, then I'll obviously raise that in Parliament directly with him. So as we go through, I will utilise what tools I've got in my armoury.
I guess following on from that, the powers that we have kind of as citizens is that we are able to lobby councillors and lobby MPs and lobby even the planning officers to some degree and ask them questions. So I guess, is there any kind of, do you have any angle on that, or using your public persona, your public abilities? That's not the right word.
Yeah, I mean, the you know, I mean, I didn't sit on planning when I was on the council, but obviously I have quite a close relationship to it, and I've been to lots of planning panels and won some and lost some. So when you're on the plans panel, and the bigger the application, the more pressure there is on you. There's probably two pressure points here. One is the law, and that's the main one. So what's the law? Is the application legal, lawful? And if it's not, then you should definitely not pass it. Then if it is, how does it fit with the council's policies, which is also important and pertinent in terms of terminal? And then where is public opinion? You know, where do people, whether they're directly local people or people who are affected, and obviously the flight path is really important in the case of the airports. If you live under the flight path, then you're an affected person. So those are things that bear on them. So whatever pressure you can bring on those points are really important to the people who sit on planning. And it's also important that they feel that public have been treated fairly, which is why I've asked for the extension for the consultation period. Because actually, if it isn't, there could be a case made at the planning application that the public didn't have a fair chance to scrutinise the application. So all of those things are important. I think that at this stage, you need to act as though the process with the council is the entire process and concentrate on that. You're already thinking we're going to lose this and then go to an appeal, and then start thinking about the appeal and planning a campaign for the appeal. Then you're not going to fully concentrate on this. So I think it's important to concentrate on this bit of the process, and then if this bit, then look at the next bit of the process. So not an appeal, sorry, I mean a court case, like the Heathrow, Bristol, Southampton. You know, they all have court cases. Mm-hmm. No, not Stansted. Heathrow, Bristol, and Stansted have all had court cases where the campaigners won. And I think it's important to concentrate on the planning appeal and not start planning for a court case yet, because there will be time to plan for a court case if the application goes through.
So out of all the MPs, there's only you and one other, and I think there's only 2 councillors who have come out with official objections.
I know Hillary's going to object. I think to say, oh well, if they haven't objected already, then they're in favour, is probably not the right approach. People are really, this crisis is really weighing on people, and so people are taking their time. I spoke to Hillary. He was actually in the front of me in the queue when we went to vote in the ridiculous spectacle of us voting this week, and we chatted about the process. He had read my objection. He's going to model his objection on my objection, which is good, and maybe to improve my objection a bit. He's going to model it on mine. So I know Hillary is. I don't know about the others. I mean, Stuart Andrew has. I've seen what Stuart Andrew said in the paper, and reading between the lines, I don't think he's objecting. I don't think he's objecting. I don't think he's going to support it formally. I honestly, I might be wrong, but I don't think he's going to intervene in it in either way. And I imagine that I've had people writing to me supporting it. I'll be honest. I've had a lot more people writing opposing, but I've had people, and he's probably, his mix of people maybe more equal, or I don't know, maybe he's taken some judgment on this, which means that he doesn't want to get too involved. But let's wait and see. He might change his mind, but I think that's where we are. And in terms of the MPs, we're probably the 2 most important, because it's directly my constituency, and then he obviously borders it. But actually, there are some MPs who are not Leeds MPs who are much nearer the airport than Richard is. So if you're the MP for Shipley or Keighley, it actually has much more bearing on you because of the flight path than it does in East Leeds. East Leeds is quite a long way from the airport, actually. But the border with Shipley constituency, I think, is like 2 miles, and with Keighley probably 3 to 4 miles away. And I don't think anybody has great hopes for Philip Davies, but sometimes it does surprise you. But I mean, I don't know what XR and Bradford are doing. I know somebody in Shipley actually who is opposed, and I think they're writing to Philip Davies, but certainly they should be encouraged to as well, because I know the airport, if you look at the Airport Consultative Committee, it has parish and town councils in those 2 constituencies, but it doesn't have any parish or town councils in the East of Leeds involved, because it's not seen as, they're not seen as being impacted, because they're not under the flight path. So, I think we need to, it's called Leeds Bradford Airport for a reason. I think we shouldn't forget about Bradford.
Well, it looks like it's 4, so I'll let you get off.
Okay, thanks a lot, Caleb. Sorry about the lateness and stuff, and I'm happy to do stuff with you in future as things move forward.
Amazing, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Have a nice day.